Okay, hello, welcome everybody. I'm going to take a second here to let folks stream in and get the Facebook live stream going. So thank you all for joining us and thank you for being here today for our next Meet the Candidates event. And for the folks who asked, yes, this will be recorded and available after the fact. So I know there was some conflicts of timing for folks having to jump off early or jump in the latter half. So it will be recorded. Okay, it's working on the background to get the Facebook going. I'm just going to jump in since we have a lot of questions from you all. Thank you again, everybody, for joining tonight's Meet the Candidates event. We are thrilled to have Kat Abughazaleh joining us from Rogers Park, Chicago tonight. She is running for Illinois' 9th District. From her career as a journalist through her decision to run for Congress, Kat has tirelessly championed change. As the Palestinian-American granddaughter of two Nakba survivors, Kat has prioritized human rights from an early age. Unsurprisingly, Kat has not only spoken about the need for a ceasefire in Gaza and peace for the Palestinian people, but she has done so from the beginning, unlike most of her opponents. This race has attracted over a dozen candidates. The crowded field has given more mainstream candidates an edge, including one who has been discreetly receiving hundreds of thousands in APAC funding. Kat's grassroots momentum, though, has her polling strongly and gives her a real shot at securing this seat for peace, justice, democracy, and human dignity. Kat is also one of the few candidates running for Congress who has made pro-peace foreign policy a centerpiece of her campaign. She knows that a foreign policy focused on military might and enriching corporations translates to a domestic policy that polices its citizens and gives big business free rein. And she has spent years pushing back against that hyper-militarized status quo. When elected to Congress, Kat will continue to uplift the voices of activists fighting for peace and democracy worldwide. Most recently, as a result of her weekly and vocal presence at the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois, Kat is now on the administration's radar. Alongside 5 others, Kat was indicted on propped up charges. Trump wants to make an example of these protesters to scare others into silence, and we cannot let this happen. Kat is being attacked by special interests and the administration because they know that she will put people first. They know that her calls for human rights, peace, and justice pose a threat to the system that brings them power at our expense. Another candidate would be less trouble for the agenda of special interests. And this is exactly why we need to stand together behind Kat in this race. So let's do that tonight and help Kat win in these 4 ways. First, please give what you can to her people-powered campaign. Her primary is one of the earliest in the nation, and that can serve as motivation to other pro-peace progressives nationwide. Second, sign up for a volunteer shift. If you're in Chicago, go knock some doors for Kat. If you're elsewhere, make some calls to get out the vote for her. Third, follow Kat on social media if you're not doing so already. Share her posts and spotlight her progressive visions. And finally, share further by sending these links to your friends and family. Now, this really is a people-powered campaign, so we need that grassroots momentum strong for her. Together, we can send Kat to the halls of Congress. And so with that, give a virtual round of applause, share those hearts. Thank you so much for being here, Kat. We're really grateful to have you, and the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Seriously. I mean, look, I love all of my endorsements equally, but it is a true honor to be endorsed by Peace Action. I truly identify so much with this mission since a young age. I am Palestinian-American, but actually one of the first international conflicts that truly got my attention was the plight of child soldiers in the Congo after a group called Falling Whistles came and spoke to my second grade class. And through college, that was an issue I cared so much about, to the point that I did major research on it and focused my studies because of that. And of course, my background on atrocity, genocide, and extremism. I want to focus on humane foreign policy, and to be endorsed by the largest grassroots peace network in the world is once again an incredible honor. And yeah, I would love to answer some questions.
Great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here. I mean, everybody knows how crazy a time it's been for you and in the campaign. So the fact that you're joining us speaks highly of your willingness to go out and talk to folks. And we got many questions that we're going to share. Some of which, so I want to lower expectations in terms of getting to all of them because we don't want to take up all night. But we've got a lot of really great questions. And why don't we start connected to what's been going on in Chicago and what you've been going through? A lot of people, what's on their minds is the massive topic of basically the fate of democracy in the U.S. And many members, Kat, appreciate how you're juggling all these things in this campaign. You're fighting fascism, you're doing mutual aid, you're running an impressive campaign that's really got a shot at winning. So a lot of people are asking about that. Specifically, Robin Kozlov asks if you see from your perspective, are there any lessons learned in terms of resisting fascism in the US that you've seen from the anti-ICE activism in Chicago that you're participating in? Anything that you're noticing that we might all learn from?
Yeah, I mean, Chicago has always been in the right's crosshairs, and this is nothing new. This goes back more than 100 years. Chicago was the center of the American labor movement, and that's why the right deployed National Guard and the Army in Chicago during the Pullman strike. And we see this over and over and over again. It's a diverse city. It's a city that with progressive and liberal values. It's a city that is continually pushing the boundary of where we should be. And I think that's incredible. Of course, this administration does not. For those who may not be as personally impacted by ICE right now, I want to describe some of what we've experienced here. We have had Black Hawk helicopters above apartment buildings with masked men rappelling down to zip tie families in the middle of the night, sorting them by race as they put them in different trailers, zip tying their hands, even naked children. And we just learned that no arrests were made. It's purely a terror campaign. There were 3 men that were day laborers outside of a Home Depot in Evanston, which is part of the 9th District. 2 of them were abducted by ICE. 1 of them got away. But 3 families lost their breadwinners. 3 families that are just trying to live their lives because 2 of them have been disappeared into the Broadview ICE facility, and 1 of them is too terrified to go outside. Masked men go into residential neighborhoods and tear gas Halloween parties. They pepper spray babies through car windows. I use the word terror campaign and secret police often, and that is purposefully. I and many others have been protesting at the Broadview ICE Processing Center, which is where ICE headquarters its operations in the Chicago area. It is not a detention facility, so people are not supposed to be held for more than 12 hours at a time, but they are being held for days or weeks, and the conditions have progressively gotten worse. When I first went to a vigil this summer, the windows were not boarded up as they are now, and we heard stories of the fact that there are no beds. So pregnant women and grandmothers were sleeping on concrete floors. No one in there was being given hot meals or access to hygienic facilities. When we started protesting out there on Friday mornings, I watched as men were marched into a van in the same clothes they were detained in. And now we've heard of even worse conditions of people standing up because there is not enough room to lay down in a cell, being given fake translators, so they'll sign their own self-deportations. They're given A numbers, alien numbers, so it's very difficult to locate them before they're disappeared into another facility in another state. In fact, someone in my district said that their family member who was shipped to a red state with horrific conditions was actually relieved because it was the first time they had slept on a bed in weeks. The latest reports are even worse. People are given 1 bathroom break a day. If they soil themselves, they're beaten. Their food is thrown on the floor. And if there's a mess, which of course there is, they are beaten. If they don't sign their own deportations, they are beaten. This is what we're hearing from in there. And there's a reason that ICE has denied our congresspeople from inspecting that facility. There is a reason that they have not allowed judges to inspect that facility. Apparently, all of the footage from October 16th to the 31st has been irretrievably lost. And that is also the reason that we have continually shown up to protest. what we have seen on the protest side is one-sided violence and one-sided escalation from ICE. They have tear gassed us, shot us with pepper bullets. I've personally been thrown to the ground multiple times, not just that one video that I feel like everyone and their dog saw. They have drove cars through people. They have dragged protesters into that facility. One morning when we got there to bear witness to the deportations, an ICE agent shot the ground with pepper balls and said, "Your First Amendment rights are on the sidewalk." And that is what they are willing to do in front of cameras. So everything that we've been through, and that includes the indictment, I want to stress the reason we are going through that is because what the people in that facility and the brown and black communities they are targeting is so much worse. They are going through so much worse conditions. But Chicago has stood up strong. Tom Homan hates this place because we know our rights. This is the only place Trump has had to cancel a rally because he was afraid of protesters. Um, the whistle has really become a symbol of strength against ICE in Chicago. We have free whistles at our campaign office, which doubles as a mutual aid hub. So if ICE is in your community, get a whistle. And what you do is if you see ICE in your neighborhood, blow it 3 times. If you see them actively detaining someone, throw it three long bursts. And this allows people who do have the privilege or the ability or the capacity or the risk level to bear witness, get the information they need or engage to do so. That is one lesson that I think Chicago has led the nation with, and one that I am really proud to be a part of. Additionally, these we need accountability. I'm scared that we're going to get through this and it's going to be like, well, that was a bad dream. Let's move on. Abolish ICE is not just a slogan. Abolish ICE means abolishing any government agency that can function like a secret police. If any government agency can function like this, it does not deserve to exist. I really want to stress to people that we are on our own. This administration doesn't care about our safety, but we have each other and we can pressure our representatives to do more. The first week I was at Broadview, there was not one single politically adjacent person there, if you count me, or unless you count me. The next week we had one. The next week after that, we had the lieutenant governor. And then a couple weeks after that, after our press conference where we demanded safety, transparency, and accountability, Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth came to insist they inspect that facility. You can put pressure on your representatives to do more. And that is really important right now because, yes, they might be in the minority in the House and Senate, but they can be doing more. And they're when they stand up to ICE, it's screwed up. But the way our society is structured is that they make us all safer, and their presence there means that if something happens, it becomes a national news story, and they need to be leveraging that to keep us all safe. So, whistles, fantastic. Knowing your rights, it's great, but ICE does not care about those rights. So, make sure that everyone around you knows what type of warrant that they can let an ICE officer in, because they get very frustrated when people know that unless that warrant is signed by a judge, that warrant does not matter. Also, making sure that ICE vehicles, you are noticing if they change out the license plates, what those license plates are. And a lot of times we don't even know if they're ICE. These could just be random men in masks going into your community and abducting people, particularly women. This is something we've seen in multiple states of men dressing up like this so they have the right to assault women. So keeping an eye out and then pressuring your representatives. These are all things we've done in Chicago and they've been working.
Wow. Thank you so much. I mean, I think what you said was so important. First of all, just to hear in really raw detail what's going on. I think a lot of us have a natural instinct to look away, and we can't. We need to hear all of it. So I really appreciate that. But it was also inspiring at the same time. And in terms of what's happening and what we can do. So you've already answered the question of what we can do. Eberhard Veit asked, including what we could do to help with the ridiculous indictment, which you point out that other people are suffering in a very, well, you're suffering in a physical way too. But what we could do to help with that, you mentioned contacting Congress. I'll put in a plug for donating to your campaign because that helped as well. But is there anything else you feel like the grassroots across the country can do that you haven't already mentioned?
Yeah, sorry if my cat's being distracting in the back, by the way. And yeah, I try not to yap for too long. I'm a journalist. I'm all about brevity. But I do I mentioned all of those instances of ICE, and I didn't even scratch the surface because it is difficult to imagine this is real, that this is in America, but it is real. And I want to say that, like, I've lived through it, I've seen it, I know it, and it can happen, and it might happen to you too. As far as my indictment, we have been really touched by the outpouring of support that we've gotten. I and my field director have been indicted. These are complete BS charges, and we pled not guilty. We plan on winning, both in court and on election day. But the best way that you can support in that way is donating, because now we have legal expenses for two lawyers on top of campaign expenses, which I'm trying to get into Congress for many reasons, one of which is making campaigns less expensive and more accessible to people that might not already be rich. I am not already rich, but I've been very lucky in being able to use the platform I built with my journalism to build this base. At the same time, to win, and this is so screwed up, we have to have the money to win first. And that means both in court and on election day. So donating is a fantastic way to do that. We also appreciate your support in general. We had people fly in to support during the arraignment, and it was unbelievably touching. And my mom actually made friends with like two different people and is going to hang out with Robin from Minnesota on the off chance Robin from Minnesota is here. Hi, Robin. We love you.
That's fantastic to hear. Um, uh, Sticking with Trump and authoritarianism just for a moment longer, because it's so important. Is there anything that you see that Congress isn't doing that you'd like Congress to do, or that you'd like to do once in Congress to deal with Trump's authoritarianism? I mean, he just throws so much at you. It's hard to know where to begin. Any thoughts about that?
I have 1,000,010 thoughts about that. It's actually why I ran for Congress in the first place. So, my background is I'm a journalist and researcher that covers the far right. I started my career at Media Matters. I got laid off after Elon Musk sued us for accurate reporting. And so then I freelanced for Mother Jones, was one of the first contributors as Zateo News, and did an hour-long explainer on white Christian nationalism for People for the American Way. And part of the reason that I decided to run, which was not in my plans for this year, was because my industry, specifically disinformation reporters, but journalism as a whole, has been used as a dry run for what is happening to the federal government. So, for example, just with that Elon Musk lawsuit, we were hit with suits over and over and over again, to the point that a nonprofit had to let go of 12 different employees. And then after that, we were harassed online, and then I was deposed a little over a year ago here in Chicago. It was the dumbest 8 hours of my life. But if that sounds familiar, that type of pattern, it's because it's what Elon Musk did to the federal government earlier this year and federal workers across the country. We, disinformation reporters specifically, and anti-extremism reporters, warned Democrats about what was going to happen. We warned them about January 6th before it happened, about COVID misinformation, about where the DEI, CRT, anti-trans panic would lead. Hell, I did a 3-hour training on how to use Fox News as a weapon for Chuck Schumer's staff, and he ignored everything I said. I am sick of waiting for other people for our leaders to do what needs to be done and to listen. So I decided to run. One of the biggest things here is, yes, we're in the minority. That does not mean you are helpless. Fascists are weak. That is why they use violence and fake shows of strength to trick you into thinking they're strong.
Right.
You need to call their bluff. Chris Van Hollen did this when he went down to El Salvador. If every Democrat stood arm in arm in front of every entrance and exit when Elon Musk marched his army of teenage incels into the Treasury Department and said, "You're going to have to drag us away or back down," I think he would have backed down, or he would have created a national scandal that would already hurt Trump's popularity, which was suffering even that early on. With this shutdown, you cannot cave. It feels like Democratic leadership is allergic to the idea of leverage. And leverage is important here. And we can't be compromising on basic human rights. That means not throwing vulnerable people under the bus. So with this shutdown, stand strong. The American people saw that their premiums are going up, and they knew that if this shutdown goes away without anything in it for Democrats, then then they'll paying double, triple for health insurance if they can even pay it at all. I was uninsured till like July. It sucks, but is the reality for a lot of Americans. Additionally, understanding right-wing conspiracy theories and narratives is really essential in fighting the right. When I was covering Tucker, I'd talk a lot about this, about how if you wanted to know what would be on the House floor on Tuesday, watch what Tucker was saying on Friday. And that was part of what I was talking about in that 3-hour training. When you understand bad faith arguments because you understand the thinking behind it and which of these GOP talking points are actually coming from 4chan or extreme pundits, you're able to not take them as seriously and focus on what really matters. If you're not taking every single thing in good faith and realizing that the old playbook is gone, the old Republican Party, if it ever existed, is gone, you are able to force them to come to the table. So I know a lot about that. And I want someone in Congress who understands the right and understands that most people in the world want what's best for their family and their kids. Republicans have created an economy and a media ecosystem of fear because that's the easiest thing to manipulate. So we can appeal to those people, but we cannot pretend like the ones that are the people who are trying to manipulate others and who are trying to consolidate their own power are acting in good faith.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we could probably spend the rest of the time just on Washington and Trump, but we got human rights issues all over the globe. And so let's move on to the sadly still very deadly crisis in Gaza and talk about Palestinian rights in general. Peace Action members, obviously, that's maybe our number one issue right now. And specifically, Liz Bajalia and Marlene Goldheimer asked questions about how you or those in Congress can support Palestinians being evacuated from Gaza. And Liz specifically asks if there's anything you or Congress could do to support Gazans returning to Gaza under the right of return and preventing Israel from using evacuations to deny that right. Do you have any thoughts? That's a pretty specific thing, but an important one. Any thoughts about that?
I have many thoughts on this. And there are so many different ideas when it comes to different solutions, and especially when it comes to returning. I myself, as it was mentioned at the top, I am the granddaughter of two Nakba survivors. And my great grandfather died with the key to his hotel still in his pocket when he was buried. If someone came to me today and said you could have that hotel back, but you would be displacing 300 people, I don't think I would say yes, because trauma begets trauma. At the same time, there are so many people being displaced in so many homes that are being have been raised. If you've seen the Gaza rebuilding plan, according to Trump and Netanyahu, it's abysmal. It essentially traps most Palestinians in Gaza to a small area that will never be rebuilt. It is an expectation so they can die. Like, let's not mince words here. One thing that we don't see enough in our own party is pressure on our own members from our own members.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea that you can't question the party if we're in power because then we'll lose power, or if we're not in power because then we'll never get power again. But in reality, accountability to your own people is the most democratic big D and small d thing you can do. I want to put that pressure on my own party. It's not because I'm Palestinian. It's because this is a human rights crisis. It is one of the worst we've seen in our lifetime, certainly in the past 10 years. My concern when we're talking about evacuations, there are so many more that need to be happening, particularly medical evacuations that aren't. But also, I worry about that ability to return, about that vacuum that could be created if those physical bodies aren't there. I know that's difficult to say, but it's the reality. The current Gaza rebuilding plan essentially cedes even more territory of the Gaza Strip that people live there. Those are people's homes after they've already been through so much trauma. What we need to, it is not enough to have a ceasefire, which there's still these people are still under bombardment. There are still not equal civil and legal rights for Palestinians. we can't just, but that can't even be the baseline of full civil and legal rights and, a ceasefire. We have to rebuild Gaza.
Yeah.
These were our tax dollars that went into this. At the same time, the United States loves to act as if it's the arbiter for everyone's agency, which means it's not. It is not. And the people that are actually living under these conditions need that agency. So we need recognition of a Palestinian state, just as 81% of the world's countries recognize it. And we need to ensure that any solution is made with people living in Israel and Palestinian people living in these territories having the same agency to negotiate this rather than having the United States be the arbiter of everything in its own self-interest. It's very frustrating to see our tax dollars go into this, to see us not following our own laws and holding our allies accountable, and to watch as people I thought wanted to stand up for the right thing, for civilians, for the working class, for peace, turn a blind eye from this. We are not going to get anywhere without recognition of Palestinian statehood, and we're not going to get anywhere until we recognize our own role and our complicity in this atrocity. And that means rebuilding Gaza as well and ensuring that people can return home.
Thank you. Peace Action is very much wanting to continue to work on rebuilding. It's just so important, and you really articulated that. You alluded to this in terms of the cycle of trauma, and Curry First and Rebecca Alwyn have asked about how to fight for Palestinian rights and still acknowledge the rights of Israelis. And specifically, they asked, you've been out there talking to people on the campaign trail. How do you talk about supporting Palestine? And do you have any sort of ways of explaining it about it not, as they put it, not being about anti-Israel, but rather against genocide and the actions of the government?
Yeah, I think that we put too much focus on everything in this world about allegiances and flags, and we forget the people behind it. Um, I grew up the granddaughter of Nakba survivors, but also a father that was born stateless. My father was born in Kuwait. He didn't really have citizenship. And my father tried to, as many Palestinian parents of that generation did, tried to kind of end the cycle of trauma that by not necessarily ignoring, but I had two very different pictures of this conflict from both my grandparents and then my father. And my Malda UN coach in third grade was a Jordanian woman, Miss King. If you're out there, I still think of you all the time. And she saw how confused I was, especially because I've been a foreign policy nerd since I was a little kid. And so she gave me like 8 films, from 3 from Palestinian filmmakers, 3 from Israeli filmmakers, and 2 from Palestinian and Israeli filmmakers. And she said, just watch all of them and let me know what you think. And when people talk about this issue as some complex thing that you can never really distill, they miss the actual complexity. It's not that it's this, millennia old blood feud that no one can get over. It's that people have lives. Everyone has their own hopes and passions and traumas and families. And we forget that the people that, like, after 1945, you have 6 million unbelievably traumatized people. I often think of the group Nakam, which was a group of Holocaust survivors who attempted to poison a water supply in Germany. The thought process being 6 million of us, 6 million of you. And many of them decades later say, I truly, I was insane with my grief. And now that we're 2 generations here, 3 for some, depending on if their parents had them older, like mine did, we have the ability to recognize that wrongs don't make a right. When I talk about this, I really stress that Palestinians, and not just Israeli people, but Jewish people, our lives and future and safety are intertwined. If one group is not safe, neither of us are safe. When I remember I was at this candidate forum where they gave us 45 seconds to address this, and no one really could. And I said, I don't even need 45 seconds. It's really simple. Every civilian deserves to live a safe life. No child deserves to go to bed hungry. And every war criminal, doesn't matter if they're from Netanyahu's government or from Hamas, should be held accountable. And we should respect international law, and Palestinians need agency. It took like 30 seconds. That is where I stand. And one thing I really want to note is the rise in anti-Semitism that we've seen after October 7th. And it's very frustrating to see people who didn't know where Gaza was or even Tel Aviv before October 7th have so many thoughts and try to pit us against each other. But like after, and if I'm talking too much, please let me know. But
No, not at all.
I grew up in Texas after 9/11. And as many of you know, there was mass Islamophobia across the country. And where I grew up, a man went into a bunch of convenience stores and shot the convenience store owners in the face. Multiple of them died. I think all of them were Sikhs. They were not Muslim, but you had this blanket Islamophobia across the board post 9/11. And after October 7th, we saw, a rise in Islamophobia and a particular rise in anti-Palestinian racism. But for the Jewish people, it's blanket anti-Semitism. And it's not just Israeli specific. And especially when every major mass shooting of the 21st century has been inspired by anti-Semitic conspiracy theories or conspiracy theories founded in anti-Semitism, it makes sense to talk about this.
Yeah.
And once again, neither of us are safe until both of us are safe. When I hear so many of my Jewish friends say "not in my name," and I say the same thing when someone tries to light some elderly Jewish people on fire in Colorado, I feel like I have just been talking for 20 years, but I just really want to stress that when we talk about this, we have to remember the humans, and no one is a monolith, and everyone has loved ones. And it's really hard to separate those things, especially in cultures and families and lineages that have been impacted by so much trauma. And
Yep.
sometimes it means accepting hard truths, like two wrongs don't make a right. And that's very frustrating after one of your family members is killed or after you are dehumanized day after day. But it means that we can build something better together. And we need to have more and more people come to the table that way.
But it's so important to have more people talking about it in that way and seeing really the humanity of it all. And once again, this embodies the polycrisis that we're under, but we could go deeper on this issue.
I've never heard the term polycrisis, but wow, I'm going to use it every day now.
Yeah, well, it had its moment. It was in fashion for about a week, I think, but it's sadly very apt. And so we're going to move on in that vein to another issue, an existential issue of for the planet of nuclear weapons, something this organization was founded on, and uh, we received a lot of questions on this, but a couple of them on prohibiting or abolishing nuclear weapons from Michael Siproth and Reverend Grant Bakewell. And the Reverend specifically asks if you're familiar, first of all, with the UN Treaty on prohibiting nuclear weapons that many countries are supporting, and if you would actively support that treaty in Congress. Rep. Jim McGovern has a bill highlighting it and supporting it. And do you have any thoughts considering that effort to prohibit nuclear weapons?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of my first model UN resolutions in middle school was about that specific topic. I I think that we as a society just kind of blew past the fact that two entire cities were devastated by nuclear weapons in 1945. I am a huge dork. I watch a lot of anime, and I think especially in the West, we kind of blow past this. And I don't mean to say I watch a lot of anime. I know everything about Japanese culture. I'm saying that almost every single show or manga that I'm reading has some type of reference to that in the way that we have a lot of like 9/11 has scarred us in a way. And the fact that the killing of so many civilians can scar a country so deeply and we don't even think about it
Yeah.
makes me dread the idea of people functioning, creating nuclear policy without thinking about those that died and about cultures and countries that are still forever scarred by that event. I feel like there's been a lot of retconning in the present of, if we didn't do this, this many more people would die. But we have to recognize now that that was not necessary. And abolition of nuclear weapons is the only way our future can function. I'm a big fan of the idea of solar punk, of a future where everyone has their material needs met, where you can have that cool futuristic sci-fi idea. I know, once again, I'm a nerd. That cool futuristic sci-fi idea, but it's not built on exploiting others. What we're seeing right now in the United States and in countries across the world are specific madmen that you have no idea if they'll launch a nuclear weapon. You have no idea if they will spell existential doom for the entire planet. This is not a way that we can function as an international community. And it really, every time I think about how many people just died in 1945 on a day they didn't expect in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it breaks my heart. And I think about it today in any of the wars that we see, our poly crises, if you will, around the world, and wonder if we could live stream it now, if people would feel the same. And then I look at Gaza and I'm not sure. But I can promise that I, as a congresswoman, will fight for us to not have nuclear weapons. Um, yeah, it's heavy.
It's very heavy. Many of us have, if you haven't done it already, many of us have made the trip to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and participated in the commemorations there. And you did a really beautiful job of speaking to the loss of those days and being there. It's just very powerful and very heavy, and we have to carry a lot of this in our hearts. And let me ask another question, and we're needing to wrap it up here soon, but maybe one more question to go into dollars and Pentagon spending. And Helen Taplin and Steve Kravitsky are concerned about hypermilitarization in the country. I mean, nuclear weapons, but lots of other things. What are your thoughts on what we can do to change the way that the country currently prioritizes funding for the Pentagon? And how can we move this spending to human needs? This is kind of an age-old question for peace movement, and it's not an easy one, but what's your perspective on that?
I think it might not be as difficult as we pretend it is, or at least as the military industrial complex pretends it is. With my campaign, a lot of what we've done has been talked about in hypotheticals of like using our resources to reach voters, but also that mutual aid component, materially improving their lives. I don't do call time. We live stream and play video games and talk to friends. And we did a Lego set because someone wanted to see us do a Lego set. And we have been raising more, connecting with people online with a fraction of the hours than we would be doing this age old practice that does not return for people unless they know rich folks. And when I started the campaign, people said that was impossible. But a lot of these ideas, such as not voting for more and more exponential growth in military spending, is talked about in the same way. We need to reframe this discussion. We're the richest country in the world. There is no reason we should have the most or any medical debt. We are the richest country in the world. There is no reason anyone should be unhoused. We're the richest country in the world. There is no reason that people should not be able to afford their groceries, even when our wages are so much higher compared to many of our peer countries. It's frankly pathetic. And I remember when I was talking to Elizabeth Warren on a live stream before I ran for Congress, where it was right when Elon Musk was proposing his cuts for Doge. And she had identified the same amount in wasteful spending, many of which came from our military contracts. What we need is a Congress that is willing to stand up to the defense industry that profits off of the deaths of millions and say, look, there is no need for us to be raising our military budget this much without doing the same or instead of every other aspect of our government that actually helps people. Because the reality is that we use our military as an excuse for not helping others. We try to, for many people, including some of my friends, joining the military was the only way they could get a higher education or they could have guaranteed health insurance. That's holding a population hostage. In reality, things like universal health care, protections against price gouging, and building more housing with federal incentives to work with local businesses are more cost effective and have better outcomes than our current system. But instead, we spend it on bombs. This isn't to say that, in our world, every country has a military, but there is no reason we should have this much wasteful spending. We should be growing that budget year over year. So it's a bigger budget than like the next, 12 countries combined. There is no reason that we need to continually militarize ourselves instead of trying to make a better country. I am sick of our service members being used as an excuse to throw the American people under the bus when they themselves are being thrown under the bus. And truly, I think shifting the conversation and communicating effectively that this is not about keeping us safe. This is about putting trillions of dollars into the pockets of very few. And standing by that is one of the most important things we can do right now. And one of the most patriotic things we can do right now, by the way.
Yeah. And we're at time, but is there any chance you could answer one more question?
I'd love to.
There's so many great questions here, and this is really specific, and it's actually from I'll put two of them together from two of our leaders of Chicago area peace action, who asked some very pragmatic questions about what to do once you're elected and make it to the halls of Congress. And Catherine Bunton, one of our leaders in Chicago area, asked, as a new member of Congress, who would you look to for mentorship in moving your agenda? And Marcia Burnton asks if you know what committees you want to be on, what might those be if you've given it thought?
I absolutely have. As for the first one, I very much respect the progressive members of Congress. Delia Ramirez here in Chicago has been a huge inspiration for me and the lead sponsor of the Block the Bombs Act. I will not look for mentorship from anyone who won't sign on to that act, I'll say. I'm sick of a coalition where you can say you're progressive and you won't stand for basic humanity. And I think, once again, we need to hold our own party accountable. As for committees, I have a more in-depth response on Ballotpedia, which, by the way, I didn't realize that a lot of candidates just don't sign up for the whole thing, but it's a fun survey to do and a fun survey to read. So first off, oversight, I would love to be able to use my skills in covering the right and fighting extremism to stop this committee from being used as a political weapon, instituting a binding code of ethics for members of Congress, and really working on reform that holds our representatives accountable instead of having them in this job for as long as they wish because of how our political system works. And then also foreign affairs. We need humane foreign policy and we need voices that are not afraid to speak out on it. I'm not bought and paid for by billionaires or any interests that get in the way of what I think is right. I'm supported by the people and for the people, and I want to support a United States that actually not just talks about peace, but actually works towards it.
And that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for your time. We know how crazy and important a time this is for you. So thanks for spending it with us. We really appreciate the in-depth and on point and from the hard answers you've given to the questions of all of our members. And we're wishing you the best of luck, and we'll continue working together on this campaign. We can let you go, and I have a couple closing words for the folks here.
I
But
just want to say thank you so much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lily, for hosting here and everyone who tuned in. Once again, I'm just really honored to work with Peace Action. The work that y'all do is incredible and valuable. And if anyone's in the Chicago area, drop by the campaign office and say hello. Thanks so much, y'all.
great, thank you. And for everybody who's still here, I'm going to make one more pitch. I mean, that was a pretty amazing presentation, I thought, in terms of her command of the issues, where she's coming from, the vision that she has that really goes beyond a lot of politicians in America's vision, and a rare candidate. So I hope everybody will leave it open for a couple seconds here for people to click on that link and give. And I want to appreciate everybody. I know it's been a challenging time for Kat in many ways, but it's challenging for all of us dealing with everything that the country is going through, everything the world is going through right now. So appreciate everybody making some time for this, and please donate to Kat, and let's win this race, and we will check in again soon with other candidates. Appreciate it. Thank you.